Okay, I'm back, and we are doing mixing today. Um, so this piece is basically done. It's been edited. So what I like to do, well, first thing, let's get rid of this. Delete. Clean up unnecessary tracks. Right? Okay, great. Everything is already labeled, so that's good. That would be the next step if it's not done. And I suppose I will go ahead and organize these. Right. So I'm gonna put the lead, yeah, the melody, the counter melody. Excuse me. And then let's put the drums. I think. Yeah, let's do that. Whoops. Why is it not? Mm-mm. There you go. Yeah, I just like to have some kind of organization. Okay. So the first step it was clipping. Actually, probably shouldn't have taken those two markers away. It was clipping in a couple of areas, so I'm just gonna go through and I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna monitor like visually and see what is way too loud. Oh, and also I'm going to normalize all the faders, even though it's gonna screw up the levels, because we're gonna save that for last. Okay. Okay. So the pads are nuts. So I have two options. Actually, I have three options. I could go with the faders again, which I'm not going to do. The reason I don't do that is because I want to be able to control the final level easier. Um, so then I could just go into the synth itself and do it. That's probably the smartest option, is just to go in and just do this, right? Oh, I realized I just did that on the wrong one, but they're both pretty loud. So let's do that. Just turn the synth itself down a little bit and see what that does. But say I was getting this and I was getting stems with someone, I wouldn't be able to do that. So then what I would do is I would use the trim. I would use the trim on the track here. So I would go in here and I would enable the trim volume, this one here, and then I would set this one. And you can just, like that, take off however many decibels you need to take off. And what's cool about this is that you can add markers and change individual parts of it easier. You know what I mean? Because if I just lower the synth, it lowers everything. Say if it was just those two spots that I wanted to fix, I could go in and I could adjust the trim volume for those two areas without affecting the entire track. So that would be one reason why you might want to do this, as opposed to just changing the synth. But I think it is overall just too loud. So we'll just turn down the synth for now and see what that does. And then if it needs more, then I will use this. So I will leave it up and let's listen to it again. pretty loud. This note. And since I'm turning down this one, I will also go ahead and turn down this one. And let's go ahead and solo them. It's always good to hear how they are on their own. So I have some stuff on my master here. I just want you to be aware that this is because of the video streaming. This is not really part of the mix. And what I would do is probably when I go to render this, I'm going to remove all the stuff I have on the master. This is for your for your benefit to keep the levels for my voice and the DAW in sync. So don't worry about this stuff here. Okay, and what I want to listen to is the couple of areas I remember were clipping. So I remember it was somewhere in the middle here. Let's unsolo and see if it's still doing it. So I think the pads are okay, but everything else is still really loud. So I'm just gonna go through and turn some things down. Yeah, I don't understand why I did that. I turned this plugin is pretty loud, and for whatever reason, while I was recording, I decided to turn it way up, which is stupid. Um, Contact player. Here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna solo the drums. I'm just gonna listen and see. I'm gonna monitor and see what we have in terms of decibels. Yeah. Like, look, it's getting all the way up to like minus 6, which is pretty nuts. Um, but I've turned it down. Okay, so I think what's happening is it's just the combination of things that's making it too loud. It's not so much that any one thing is like that nuts. Although my pads are pretty crazy. But yeah. Oh, and did I turn these ones down as well? I believe I did. Okay, so let's check the new levels and see if they're okay. Um, yeah, still too loud. Okay, so it looks like the step and the two pads are like kind of the culprits here. Oh, I forgot to turn this down, huh? I totally did. Okay, so I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn it down like a lot, like 25%. I'm gonna turn everything down a lot because we can always add makeup gain when we compress at the end, but we just can't have everything blasting to that degree as much as I would like to. We just can't. So let's just turn things down. But I'm only going to turn it down to a certain degree in here in the plugin. Um, if it gets to the point where I turned it down and it's still too loud, I will then go and hit the trim on the DAW mixer. That pretty much always solves the problem. Um, yeah, we at least it's my prerogative not to use any plugins when it comes to leveling stuff out, um, unless it's a like a bass guitar issue where it's like some notes aren't coming out. That may be a at a compressor situation, but in terms of this, it's just a little balance work. It just needs to be done. Let's listen again. Okay, so I've messed up. I made the melody. It's still too loud, and the counter melody is not loud enough. It's getting buried. So let's fix that. I may want to start messing with the trim pots. It's a little easier than opening and closing plugins. It's also an issue of the plugin interface is not really good for mixing, right? Because it's a free plugin. So I may just like forego touching the source, even though that's usually the best place to go when you have, too much volume coming out of stuff. Um, I may just deal with the levels I have and mix it using the digital mixer. It's up to you to decide how you want to approach it. It's going to produce the same result either way, pretty much. Yeah, this is. I'm going to put this back kind of where it was. Just go over here. I just want to hear. good in terms of level, and then it just got out of control once everything was really going. So listen. I believe I made a mistake in turning down the drum. I'm going to undo the change I did there because I feel like I was misinterpreting it as the drums being too loud. Excuse me. But really, what was happening? This was -5, if I remember correctly. Excuse me. I misinterpreted it as the drums being too loud, but really it was just a combination of all these loud synths. So let's. I'm going to hit the trim pot of these guys, just because that's what I like to do. Let's just shave a couple decibels off the top. It was this one, and the two pads were causing some trouble, getting nasty. Now what I could do is I could put a marker here and then only do the section that I feel is causing trouble, but I'd rather be consistent in terms of how I'm affecting it. I brought that down by 4. Okay, so then I'm going to do this one by the same amount. What was it? 4.6? 4.6. And I could 4.6. I'll just double check that I edited the right thing. Yeah. Okay, let's listen to this section again. So I may not have been clear as to what am I listening for. So I'm listening to make sure that all the individual lines that I have in terms of the tracks are audible and more or less balanced, with the exception of obviously I want the lead, the melody to be the most prominent, which I think it stands out pretty well just by the nature of it, how it's written. Um, I want there to be a clear differentiation between the counter melody and the melody, which I think because of the volume discrepancy, you're not going to mistake them. I'm also making sure that the pads are clear both as individual units, but then as a part of the rhythm section of the piece. Um, and that in general, that, all the little things, all the nuances, like the little symbols and whatnot, are audible, but not sticking out in a way that is changing the perception of the piece in some way that I don't like. So far, I think my levels are pretty good. And one thing I'm doing is I'm looking down here to see that at least the peaks, and the general level of stuff is kind of consistent. Obviously, it's not going to be the same between tracks, but like if we look, just I'm happy with the levels on that. So now I will begin the EQing process. So I'll literally just go down the line, I think, and just EQ. I'm not going to use the free plugins for this one because I like the ones that I got with my interface. That's what I'm going to use. Um, so I will be using Scarlet EQ. And before I touch anything, I just like to think about, in terms of the individual track. So I'll solo when I'm editing and listen to a little bit of it. So in terms of the sound of that, I think it could use maybe a tiny little bit more bass to give it a little more fullness, and then maybe a little bit more high end so that it has a bit of more ring to it. I believe when I made this, my idea was a bell-like sound, so it needs to be EQ'd in a way that's going to accentuate that. Unless there's a baby crying. Listen to it in context. frequency, and I'm going to increase the slope of it a bit. So that what it does. Listen to what that does. I'm just going to leave it here, and I'll play that one note so that we can hear the changes. So I could raise high mid. I think that will make it a little harsh. If I do that, I'm going to slightly raise high frequencies, and I'm going to increase the gain on the high a tiny bit, like that. And let's play that note. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mute some of the high middle frequencies here. So I'm lowering the amount that the frequency is affected here. That's what that does. And I'm going to lower the frequency slightly. Let's listen to it before I mess with the gain. I like the gain. I'm going to leave it where it is. And I'm going to add back a little bit of low mid to compensate for that. Like that. I took some gain out here, so I'm going to add some gain here. And listen to it. Too much gain. Take some back. And I'm going to sharpen this a little bit, so it's going to increase the effect a little more. Okay, and now let's listen to it in context to make sure it doesn't sound terrible. Yep. I think that's good. So before I do anything else to it, I'm going to finish my EQing, because as you EQ, you're going to affect things, right? It's going to affect the balance. So I'm not going to run and add a bunch of effects and stuff to this one track and then have to re-EQ things. So let's continue with EQing. So let's do our counter melody. And the main thing is making sure that these two sounds are distinct and are complementing each other and not clashing with each other. So I'll solo it for now, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to them both. So where this is meant to be bell, like this is meant to be more kind of pianistic almost. What's the patch I used? Oh, an oboe. Oh, okay. An oboe. I'm trying to think of what the waveform of an oboe would be like if you drew it out. So let me think. Okay, so let's listen to it. So if we want an oboe, we probably want more high frequencies, right? So I'm going to increase the slope of the high frequencies significantly. Let's check that. So raise high frequencies. I'm not sure where an oboe cuts off. I'm pretty sure it's pretty high, right? And let's go ahead and adjust. Let's add a little more gain to the high frequencies as well. And then let's take some gain out of the lows. And I'm going to take some slope out of the lows as well. Let's check that. And let's increase our high mids. And notice I'm not making notice I'm not making massive, humongous changes to it because obviously, at least when you're doing digital production, you want to make the patch sound as close to finished as you can. So I'm probably not going to be making any huge changes. I just want to smooth things out. At least that's my approach to doing a mix on this kind of thing. Um, Not always. There are times where you may want to get intense, but this this is not one of them for me. I want to take out. Whoops. I'm going to take out a little bit of the mids as well. I don't need it to sound just like an oboe, but I do want it to sound more like an oboe than that. Okay, let's check them together. I think that will work. The drums, Probably with the drums, I will probably add a compressor on these, especially considering it's mainly just like it's very rhythmic. It's not really doing anything. Um, So I should say, normally it's a good idea to expand out the drums of your drum machine into individual tracks. You can do that, so that you have like 6 tracks or whatever, and EQ them individually, so you can like boost the bass and whatnot. In this case, I really only have 2 drums and an occasional cymbal going on, so I'm just going to EQ it all as one. In this case, normally you wouldn't do that, but I can get away with it in this case. So I'm going to do it. I'm just going to increase the slope of the lows quite a bit, and that should add some beefiness to the kick and tom. And then I'm going to raise, I believe, my high mids a little more to give a little more sheen to the little cymbal rolls. But again, I'm not going to make too big a change here. Let's add a little bit of gain to the mids as well. Let's listen to that. Does it need the compressor? It probably doesn't need it, to be honest. It probably doesn't need it because there's not enough dynamics. Like normally, if I had like some real beats and like changing beats and you know, like guitars and things that influence the levels more and the articulation, I would probably put a compressor so that um, you can hear all of the nuances of snare and whatnot. But because there's no snare here at all, right? There's only it's a little tiny cymbal roll. It doesn't really need for every single hit to stand out. So for that reason, I'm not even going to bother putting a compressor on the drums. I'm just going to do a little bit of EQing and that's it. So let's move on to our next thing. And granted, if I were dealing with acoustic drums, I would have to do more. But because I do the drum machine, we can get away with doing minimal EQing because they've already been EQ'd one time, right? Okay, let's do our stepwise. This one's probably gonna be pretty gnarly. Um, So one thing to be mindful of is like, what is the role of that particular track or instrument in your composition, right? So this thing, it's mostly low end. I had not intended for it to be a bass line, but that's kind of how it's functioning. So because of that, I'm going to accentuate the lower frequencies. Um, if you wanted it to serve a different role, then you would EQ this differently. But because that's how I'm thinking of it, that's what I'm going to do. But I'm going to do it by increasing my low mids a little more and the slope of those a little sharper. And only a slight bump to gain. And I'm going to take some highs out of it for two reasons. One, to accentuate the low frequencies, but also because there's an area near the end where it plays that high note. And I want to take some of the sharpness out of that. So I'll have to make sure that I check that. And I'm going to reduce the slope on our high mids a tiny bit. And so let's check those two spots. Let's check here. That sounds okay. And you always want to check it solo and check it in context. The rest is basically a copy, so I don't really need to check it. There's only, I think I changed one note. Okay, let's check our pads. And here again we have the same kind of thing where we have one that's higher, one that's lower. So even though they're pretty similar, we are going to EQ them differently. So this is the first one. Oh, I'm going to solo it because I'm not sure what it is. Okay, so this one I'm feeling like a little, whoops, a little mid scoop with a boost in the lower mids and upper. Oop, truck backing up. Okay, what was I saying? Let's increase the lows for that low note there. Not too much though. And then I said scoop the mids a bit. Alright, we don't need that much. So let's lower that. Actually, I want to raise the frequency, but I want to lower the volume. That's what I want. And then scoop that and raise this. Oftentimes I find changing the slope of the EQ is more impactful than just doing the gain. Of course, I'm pretty conservative with my adjustments, but that's what I like to use both so that you can have a sharper curve if that's what you want. So let's listen to this again. Last pad. So I'm thinking this one, it's more static chords, so I'm going to make it a little more thick and bassy is my idea. Whoops. Do-do-do. So let's remove a little bit of the highs. I'm going to flatten the high mids without cutting them too much. So I'm just going to lower the frequency slightly. And then we're going to increase the lower mids a bit. It's quite a bit. Excuse me. And the lows, tiny bit. Tiny bit. Oh. You see, I messed with the EQ on my pad, and now it's too loud. So I'm going to have to adjust the levels. Um, which obviously if I had done the faders earlier, you could still do it. But what if I had like pulled this all the way down here and then it was still too loud, which can definitely happen. So that's why I use the trims the way I do, so to avoid that. All of these are, you know what I mean, untouched. That will be like one of the last things I do. Um, Getting pretty happy with the EQ portion of it. Um, so the next thing I would do is any effects that I'm going to use and add, which honestly I don't know that I'm going to add any effects because these are all pretty spacey pads. Like what would I add to them? Um, and I'm probably going to add some reverb to the final mix of it. You know what I mean? To the whole track. So I'm probably not going to add any reverbs or delays beyond the one that I used. I think in the lead. Yeah, I used it. I used one delay. Um, so other than that, I mean, I will listen to it again all the way through. Now that it's been gone through a couple times, and see if there's anything I want to change in terms of obviously the final levels that's going to be addressed. Um, but just in terms of what I've done, in terms of the balance of them, in terms of the EQing. So let's give it one last listen, and I will probably sleep on it, and then I will make a decision on it tomorrow when I work on it again, when I look at it again. I think it's always good to take some space and time away to, you know, gather your ideas and make sure you're confident on, what you decide, and sometimes you change your mind. Um, and sometimes it's best to do that when you're not sitting in front of it, where your inclination is probably going to be to tweak and fiddle with it endlessly. So it's one last listen to see if I screwed it all up. Okay, so that's the preliminary mix. I would say, again, probably I will listen to it again and I might make a couple changes. But so far, with my tired ears, because I've been working, it sounds pretty good to me. Yeah. So, provided that I am still happy with this tomorrow, we will do the. I would just do the mastering, just to compress the master track, and maybe add a little reverb, and then it'll be ready. It'll be good to render. So I hope that you got something out of this, and I enjoyed sharing it with you. Thanks for watching.